What's going on, y'all? How's your guys' day going? Hope you're having a good day. Today's good. Thank you for asking. I believe that more people should experience ego death. Now, I feel as though that it's very easy to convince yourself that you might have gone through that, or should I say, that there is a sort of resolution to it. But I don't think that's what ego death is. I think that from what I've seen, a lot of people calling ego death isn't actually ego death. And don't get me wrong, it's definitely not one of those things that you can categorize or put into such simple examples or actions or experiences, or just life in general. Ego death is a very subtle thing, I feel like it's not what we make it out to be. But it's a almost like, if you've ever heard necessary evil. And it's not evil, but I just use that as an example. It's one of those things that can come across as dangerous and can come across as bad, but I believe it's necessary. I believe that people often, I feel like it's frequent, but not in the right timing. I feel like the timing is where it kind of gets screwed up, because I feel as though that psychologically, at least, it's typically when you're older, when you're much, much older, like when you get into your 60s, I feel like, is where people often experience ego death. And the reason being that they realize how much of their life has been dependent on so many specific aspects of their identity. And it's only until they realize how much of life does not reside with such absolutism that they realize where they went wrong, I suppose. And I feel as though that there is such thing as experiencing ego death at a very young age that can be dangerous, but I feel as though it's like how you bounce back is far more important than simply experiencing it. And that might be where people get it wrong. Because it's one thing to go through it, but it's another to have learned from it and to have seen the other side, essentially. See the other side of everything. Really, there really isn't a specific side that you should be looking at, right? It's like, if I had to put it into words, it would be like, if you, like, let's say you're maturing, right? Let's say you're growing up and you're getting older. When you're young, you might think the phrase, oh, well, the grass is greener on the other side, or the grass is always green on the other side, whichever version you prefer. But then as you get older, you'll begin to start thinking the grass is green wherever you water it. And that time period that it takes for you to mature, and the time that it takes for you to grow, could be like a very subtle, or I guess I should say, a less severe version of ego death. But that would be how ego death comes across, right? Where you take the time to realize that you may have been right, or you may have been on target, but at the wrong angle. It's like realizing the significance of puzzles, or seeing a puzzle, like the bigger picture, basically, right? And I'm trying to choose my words very carefully, because I feel like it's very easy. It's very easy for us to miss the mark, or to kind of bundle ego death with a lot of very similar things. And examples would be, or I guess the most popular example would be religion, right? Going through a spiritual awakening of types, or I guess enlightenment. That would be the most common. Typically, when a person finds a new religion and they become very involved in it and they learn new things and they gain new perspectives, that is absolutely a type of ego death. But I'm not sure if people know why. I'm not sure if people necessarily pinpoint what the significance of it is and how to continue after it. Because it's very easy to have experienced ego death and lose yourself. You can absolutely float in the void, so to speak. It would be like if you were an astronaut and you're in space and your whole job is to work on the ISS, and you start floating away and you never get grounded again. You never get back to your original job. That's kind of like what ego death is, where you have such a severe level of adamancy about your identity that anything that comes at it in a hostile way is something to attack. And the more you begin to experience ego death, and the more that you begin to experience that, I don't like the word enlightenment. Like it is enlightenment. It is a form of enlightenment, but I feel like the word disconnection is better. Like a disconnect, because it isn't so much meant to be gaining something. It's actually supposed to be the opposite, or at least I believe so. It's not supposed to be this like you've unlocked a new level. I feel like that's how people talk about it when I hear people use that word. They talk about it as if they unlocked like a new side of life, or that they unlocked something that was not there. And yeah, don't get me wrong, that absolutely can be a way to describe it, or can be a type, but it's more than that. It's much, much, much more than that. It's a letting go. You let go of everything you've hung on to so tightly. I feel like that's the central core of ego death, is learning to let go with that tightness, though, with the like you're holding on so tight that your hands start to bleed. And the more that you loosen your grip, the more light you feel. You don't feel so chained down to your thoughts, to your feelings, to everything that you come across. Like an example would be your automatic reactions. You see, everybody has automatic reactions, right? Like if you get into a fight, if you get into an argument, if you get upset at something, if you get sad at something, if someone says something that triggers you or causes you to react in a very particular way, or you see something that causes you to react in a very particular way. And there's nothing wrong with the actions in and of themselves, but there is a problem when you become so attached to it that you forget why it is that you're even acting or being the way that you are. And I feel as though that ego death is what allows you to observe that. You start watching your thoughts instead of thinking them. I feel like that's the biggest difference, where you realize you are the observer. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. And you begin to look at not just yourself, but life in that way. And it's a beautiful thing, but it can be a scary thing also. And I feel like that's where people get kind of lost in, almost like if they were like on an adventure. You know, like if you're on an adventure in the jungle, and on the other side of the jungle is whatever, right? It's very easy to get lost in the jungle. And I feel like that's where a lot of people get lost at. That's where a lot of people kind of reside in. They get comfortable in the jungle. And it can feel safe too. That's the funny part. I feel like that might be a reason why, or one of the many reasons why, is because when you're in that state of mind of letting go and beginning to see things from a much less constrained perspective, you almost become, I don't want to say scared, but you become very hesitant. You become very hesitant to attach yourself to something new. But once you find a way to balance, a way to, I guess, align yourself in a way that doesn't betray yourself, that's when you find that enlightenment, when you find the other side of the jungle. It doesn't have to be this grandiose big thing that you become like a monk, right? Like, it isn't like you go from being just a normal everyday person to being this super strict monk who, now you only meditate for 3 hours a day. And if that's what you want to do, more power to you. But I think we just get lost in the restrictions. We get lost in the rules of what it means to even feel that way or to experience that type of thing. And I know this video is supposed to be about that more people should be experiencing it, but that comes with a cost. It comes with a great cost. And that cost is, how I said earlier, just floating in the void, really. Because you equally have to be able to let go and find where to hold on. You should never be holding on to something so tightly that the entire core of your being is lost if you were to let go. But then you also don't want to be holding on to nothing, because then you basically have nothing to, I guess, bounce your reality back off of. And that can kind of drive you, it can drive you to a level of, I don't want to say insanity. I mean, if you did it long enough, I'm sure it would. But you never want to lose your way. You never want to get so lost that you can't ground yourself in anything. Because then you'll just feel like you're not meant to be. You'll feel like you were cursed to be lost forever, or feel like you can never connect to people or to life or to things anymore. And again, it's the balance. Because it might feel that way initially, or for the rest of your life, if you were to go that route. Like, it might feel that way, that you struggle to connect in the same way that you did. But that doesn't mean that you can't connect at all. When I feel like that happened to me. I feel like that's what happened to me. I remember I struggled with connecting, even on the most simple terms, even on the most simple aspects, where it felt like you just can't fully commit. You can't fully explore a road. Not because you don't want to, but because of what it might not mean. It's like almost the opposite effect. It's like you're not worried with what you will find, you're worried of what you're not finding. But it's a good thing, though. It's beautiful. It allows you to appreciate more. I feel like the first, at least for me, was appreciation. It was gratitude. It was fear. But not fear in the sense of like, I'm scared to do anything, or I'm scared of living, or stuff like that. But fear in the sense of the gravity of things. It's kind of like if you've ever researched something before, like something very, I guess, intense, like, history, really. If you've ever been the type of person to research history and you realize just how crazy things were, or how life has been for such a long time, it'll change your perspective, and it'll give you a new fear for what you see in day-to-day life, right? Because they always say history repeats itself. So if you were to go research history and you see what's happening then, you're more than likely going to be pretty scared of what might happen now. And so it's kind of like that feeling. It's that feeling of caution, which I know might not sound like they match, right? But they don't match in the way that you might think they do. Like having caution and having fear it's caution towards, I guess, comfortability. You don't want to get comfortable. You don't want to find yourself, I guess, falling back into old habits. Because, and I know I said it at the beginning, but it's easy. It's easy to convince yourself that you've, like I said, unlocked something, or that you've now changed and you are no longer meant to think about things in the same way. Where, like, so I guess an example would be just like the analogy I gave of maturing, right? Like, so you go from thinking about things as the grass is green on the other side, and then you get to the grass is green where you water it. Just because you think that, right, you get to that new realization, doesn't mean you shouldn't keep going. And then that's another problem I feel like people have, is people experience ego death or enlightenment, or they become aware of things, but then they stop. They stop pushing forward. They stop looking for more. They stop, I guess, trying to grow, because they think that they've plateaued. They think that they've hit somewhere, or they think they found it out. Like, that's the worst thing. The worst thing you can convince yourself is that you've figured it out, right? You'll never figure it out. You'll only ever have scraps. And that's not meant to be a bad thing, though. That's not meant to be a scary thing or a sad thing, right? It's kind of like, if you've ever heard the two dichotomies of nothing matters, right? Because, like, one side will say, man, nothing matters. And then the other side will say, dude, nothing matters, right? So it's like, it's the dichotomy of that, basically, where you could think of it as, I have nothing, and then I have nothing, so I have everything. I feel like basically what Tyler Durden said. I thought of that. I just thought of that scene. If you've never seen Fight Club, that's exactly what Tyler Durden says. He says it's only until we've lost everything that we can have anything. And that's true. That could be a good example of ego death, of letting go. But anyways, just wanted to come on here and share my thoughts. If you agree, disagree, let me know what you think down below. I appreciate you watching this video. Hope you have a good rest of your day.